What happens when an awakened person meets their soulmate? You'd think the answer would be simple. Two conscious people, both having done their inner work, finally finding each other. Fireworks, perfect harmony, the end of searching. But Carl Jung, who spent his entire life studying the human psyche, discovered something far more complex and infinitely more interesting. Here's the paradox: the moment you stop needing someone to complete you is often the exact moment you become capable of meeting them. Not the fantasy version you've been projecting onto every person who gave you butterflies. The real them. The actual soul meeting that changes everything. And Jung understood this better than almost anyone because he lived it. He studied it. He wrestled with it in his own complicated relationships. He mapped the entire psychological territory of how two people truly connect at the deepest level. Not through need, not through projection, but through something he called the conjunctio, the sacred union of two whole beings. He also discovered something else fascinating. He noticed that when people were ready for this kind of connection, the universe seemed to conspire to bring it about. He called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that defy logical explanation. You think of someone and they call. You need a specific kind of person in your life, and they appear. You're ready for love, and suddenly you keep running into the same person in impossible circumstances. But synchronicity only works when you're aligned with your deeper self, when you're living authentically, when you've done the work to become who you actually are. It's as if the universe responds to your inner wholeness by reflecting it back in external circumstances. Most people chase relationships from a place of incompleteness. You've done this. I've done this. We meet someone and suddenly they seem to carry everything we're missing. They're confident where we're insecure, calm where we're chaotic, free where we're trapped. And we think this is it. This is my person. This is what I've been searching for. But here's what nobody tells you: that lightning bolt you feel isn't love. It's recognition. You're recognizing your own unconscious, your own missing pieces reflected back at you in another person's face. And that recognition feels like magic until it doesn't. Until they can't carry your projections anymore. Until they reveal they're just human. Until the fantasy collapses and you're left wondering what went wrong. Think about the last person who took your breath away. Remember that feeling like you'd known them forever. Like they understood you in ways no one else did. Like they were the answer to questions you'd been asking your whole life. That wasn't delusional. That was real recognition. But you were recognizing yourself, not them. You were seeing your own potential reflected back, your own unexplored depths mirrored in their eyes, your own unlived life projected onto their story. Jung called this the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies we all carry. When you haven't integrated these parts of yourself, you project them outward. You fall in love not with a person, but with your own soul trying desperately to love itself through someone else's body. Every relationship you've had that started with intensity and ended in disappointment follows this pattern. It's not that you chose wrong. It's that you chose unconsciously. You were trying to find outside yourself what can only be found within. And this is why awakening changes everything about love. Because awakening in Jung's framework means you've done something most people never do. You've turned inward instead of outward. You've faced your shadow, all the parts of yourself you've been running from. You've dropped your persona, the mask you wear to get approval. You've integrated your anima or animus. You've made peace with your inner opposite. And you've touched something Jung called the self with a capital S, that center of consciousness that exists beyond your ego. You've become whole, not perfect, not done, but whole. And when you're whole, the entire game of relationship shifts. You're no longer looking for someone to complete you because you're already complete. You're not searching for your other half because you've discovered you were never half to begin with. You're not trying to fill a void because you've learned to sit with the emptiness and find it's actually fullness. This is what awakened means in relationship context. And it's the prerequisite for what Jung considered true sacred union. But here's where it gets interesting. When you finally reach this place of wholeness, when you've done the brutal, beautiful work of becoming yourself, you might meet someone who stops you in your tracks, not because they complete you, but because they see you. Actually see you. And in their eyes, you recognize something you've never seen before another whole person. This isn't the desperate attraction of projection. It's the magnetic pull of soul recognition. And it's completely different from anything you've experienced before. You'll know it because there's clarity alongside the attraction. There's peace alongside the excitement. There's curiosity alongside the desire. You see their shadows, and you don't need to fix them. You notice their wounds, and you don't need to heal them. You feel drawn to them, but not desperate for them. And this is what happens when an awakened person meets their soulmate. Not the fairy tale version, the real version. The one that requires everything you've learned about yourself and challenges you to keep growing anyway. By the time we're done here, you're going to understand why every relationship before this one failed, why awakening had to come first, and what becomes possible when two people meet, not from emptiness, but from fullness. This isn't about finding perfect love. It's about understanding what conscious love actually requires, and why Jung believed the meeting of two individuated souls is one of the most transformative experiences available to human beings. Let's start with why you fall in love at all. Because understanding this changes everything. You meet someone at a party. Across the room, your eyes lock. Something inside you recognizes something in them. The conversation flows like you've known each other forever. They laugh at your jokes. They seem fascinated by your stories. And within hours, sometimes minutes, you're thinking, could this be the one? There's a reason this experience feels so powerful, so undeniable, so right. And Jung spent years figuring out what that reason actually is. The person you just fell for isn't actually who you think they are. In that moment of recognition, what you're seeing isn't them. You're seeing your own unconscious projected onto their face, like a movie onto a screen. You're seeing the parts of yourself you haven't integrated yet, the qualities you've disowned, the energies you've pushed away, all reflected back at you in human form. For men, Jung called this projection the anima, the unconscious, feminine energy within. For women, it's the animus, the unconscious, masculine energy within. But regardless of gender or sexuality, everyone carries these energies. And when they're unconscious, when you haven't done the work to integrate them, you project them outward. You see a woman who seems mysterious, intuitive, emotionally deep. But what you're actually seeing is your own unexplored emotional world. You see a man who seems confident, decisive, powerful. But what you're actually seeing is your own undeveloped capacity for agency. And you fall in love not with who they are, but with who you need to become. This is why that initial attraction feels like completion. Because psychologically, it is completion. You're finally meeting the missing parts of yourself. Except you're meeting them outside instead of inside. And no human being can carry that projection for long. Think about your last intense relationship. Remember how perfect they seemed in the beginning. Remember making that list of all their qualities, kind, funny, passionate, deep, exactly what you were looking for. Now remember how that same list became a list of disappointments. They weren't as kind as you thought. Their humor felt shallow after a while. The passion faded. The depth was actually just them not talking much. What changed? They didn't change. Your projection lifted. You started seeing them as they actually are, a complex, flawed, beautifully imperfect human being. And because you fell in love with your projection, not with them, you felt betrayed, deceived, like they tricked you. But they didn't trick you. Your psyche tricked you. It used them to show you what needs integrating in yourself. Every person you've desperately loved was actually you trying to love yourself through them. And this pattern repeats. Different faces, same story. You meet someone new, they seem different this time. You're sure you've learned from past mistakes. And then 6 months later, the same disappointment. The same realization that they're not who you thought. The same painful ending. Jung mapped this cycle precisely. First comes enchantment. They seem perfect. You feel complete. The world sparkles. This is it, you think. This is finally it. Then comes disappointment. They reveal their humanity. The perfect image cracks. You start noticing flaws. Small things at first, then bigger things. The way they chew, their boring stories, their neediness or distance or whatever quality you suddenly can't stand. Third comes the power struggle. You try to change them back into your projection. Why aren't you being spontaneous anymore? Why did you stop being mysterious? Why can't you just be who you were when we met? But of course, they can't be that person. That person never existed. And so you fight. You manipulate. You criticize. You try desperately to sculpt them back into your fantasy. And finally comes either breakup or deadness. You leave and find someone new to project onto. Or you stay, but the aliveness dies. The relationship becomes routine obligation, two people existing side by side, but not truly meeting. You tell yourself this is just how relationships are. That passion always fades. That you need to be realistic. But the real issue isn't that passion fades. It's that it was never based on reality to begin with. This is the pattern Jung saw everywhere. The same cycle playing out in millions of relationships. And he realized that most people never escape it. They either jump from person to person, chasing the high of new projection, or they settle into deadness, convinced real love doesn't exist. But there's a third option, a way out of the cycle entirely. And it requires something most people never do: stop looking outward and turn inward instead. This is where awakening begins. Not with finding the right person, with becoming whole yourself. For some people, this realization comes through rock bottom. The breakup that finally breaks you open. The divorce that forces you to face yourself. The string of failed relationships that makes you finally ask, what if the problem isn't them? What if it's me? What if I'm bringing the same unconscious patterns to every connection and expecting different results? For others, it comes through a quieter desperation. You're not in crisis, but you're tired. Tired of performing, tired of pretending, tired of the gap between who you are and who you show the world. And one day you just stop. Stop seeking, stop searching, stop trying to find yourself in someone else's eyes. And in that stopping, something shifts. You start doing the work Jung described as individuation, the long, difficult, beautiful process of becoming yourself. If this is resonating, if you're recognizing your own story here, leave a comment, share where you are on this journey, and subscribe to keep exploring what awakening actually means for love. Here's what that work actually looks like. Because awakening isn't some mystical experience where you suddenly transcend your humanity. It's a psychological process with specific stages, and Jung mapped every one of them. First, you face your shadow. This is everything you've been denying about yourself. The anger you pretend you don't feel, the jealousy you'd never admit to, the selfishness lurking under your nice person mask, the cruelty you're capable of, the pettiness, the greed, the lust, all of it. Most people spend their lives running from their shadow. They project it onto others instead. That's why you see in others what you can't see in yourself. The person who constantly complains about manipulative people is usually unconsciously manipulative. The one who's obsessed with calling out narcissists is often struggling with their own grandiosity. Whatever you judge harshly in others is almost always your own shadow showing you what needs integrating. Facing the shadow means owning it, not acting on every dark impulse, but acknowledging that those impulses exist. Sitting with the uncomfortable truth that you're capable of the very things you condemn. This is terrifying, because it means admitting you're not who you thought you were. The good person mask slips. The spiritual person reveals their darkness. The kind person confronts their capacity for cruelty. But in that confrontation, something miraculous happens. Jung called it the transcendent function. When you hold two opposites in consciousness, simultaneously, a third thing emerges. You're both light and dark, both good and bad, both saint and sinner. And in accepting this paradox, you become whole, not perfect. Whole. There's a massive difference. And in that acknowledgement, something profound happens. The shadow loses its power. You're no longer controlled by the parts of yourself you deny. You're no longer projecting them onto partners and then fighting with your own reflection. You become infinitely more trustworthy, not because you're only good, but because you know your capacity for bad and you choose otherwise. Second, you drop the persona. This is the mask you wear to be acceptable, the role you play to earn love, the performance you put on to fit in. For some, the persona is the good girl, who never makes waves. For others, it's the strong guy, who never shows weakness. For others still, it's the spiritual one, who's above human messiness. The persona isn't inherently bad. We need some social adaptation. But problems arise when you forget it's a mask. When you start believing you are the role you play. When you've performed for so long that you've lost touch with who you actually are underneath. Dropping the persona is terrifying because it means risking rejection. If people love the mask, will they love the real you? If you've built your worth on being nice, what happens when you set a boundary? If you've built your identity on being strong, what happens when you admit you're struggling? But dropping the persona is also liberation. Because living authentically, even if it means some people walk away, is infinitely better than being loved for someone you're not. Third, you integrate your anima or animus. This is the inner opposite you've been projecting onto potential partners. For most men, this means developing the qualities culture deems feminine: emotional awareness, intuition, receptivity, tenderness. For most women, it means developing the qualities culture deems masculine: agency, decisiveness, assertiveness, strength. But gender is just one lens. More broadly, integration means developing your opposite energies. If you're naturally analytical, you develop your feeling side. If you're naturally emotional, you develop your thinking side. If you're naturally passive, you develop your active side. If you're naturally aggressive, you develop your receptive side. This integration is crucial for relationship, because as long as these energies are unconscious and projected, you'll keep seeking completion in another person. You'll keep looking for someone to be what you haven't developed in yourself. And that dynamic breeds codependency, resentment, and eventual disconnection. But when you've integrated your inner opposite, when you've developed both poles within yourself, you become whole. And from that wholeness, you can meet another whole person without needing them to complete you. Fourth, you connect to what Jung called the self, not the ego, that chattering voice in your head, but the deeper center of consciousness that exists beyond your thoughts, beyond your feelings, beyond your identity. Some people call this soul, Others call it awareness. Others call it presence. The words don't matter. What matters is you touch something inside yourself that feels both deeply personal and mysteriously universal. This connection often comes through crisis, through meditation, through nature, through art, through suffering, through moments of unexpected grace. You can't force it. You can only create conditions that make it more likely. And when it happens, when you touch that center, you realize something staggering. You're not who you thought you were. You're not your story, your past, your trauma, your achievements, your failures. You're the awareness witnessing all of it. And in that realization, there's both humility and power. Humility because you see how small your ego concerns really are. Power because you're no longer identified with them. This is what awakening means in Jung's framework. Not transcending your humanity, not becoming enlightened in some absolute way, but becoming conscious, becoming whole, becoming yourself, not the self you've been pretending to be, but the self you actually are beneath all the conditioning and fear and projection. And when you've done this work, when you've faced your shadow and dropped your persona and integrated your opposites and touched your deeper self-relationship becomes possible in an entirely new way. Because now, when you meet someone, you're not meeting them from emptiness. You're meeting them from fullness. You're not looking for completion. You're looking for resonance. You're not seeking someone to carry your projections. You're seeking someone who's done their own work and can stand fully in their own wholeness while you stand in yours. This is what Jung called soul recognition. Not the fantasy version where you find your other half. The real version where two whole people recognize each other's depth and choose to create something together. And here's what most people don't understand. This kind of meeting is rare. Not because soulmates are rare, but because people who've done this level of inner work are rare. Most people never face their shadow. Most people never drop their persona. Most people never integrate their inner opposite. Most people never touch their deeper self. Most people stay unconscious. And unconscious people can't experience conscious love. They can experience projection, codependency, comfort habit. But not the awakened soulmates connection Jung described. So when you finally meet someone who has done the work, when you encounter another awakened person who sees you clearly and loves you anyway, it's extraordinary. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Let me tell you what that actually looks like. Imagine you've spent years working on yourself. You've been in therapy. You've done the shadow work. You've learned to set boundaries. You've developed both your masculine and feminine energies. You've touched something deeper than your ego. You're not perfect, far from it. But you're conscious. You're aware of your patterns. You take responsibility for your reactions. You know the difference between your projections and reality. And then you meet someone. Maybe at a coffee shop, maybe through friends, maybe on some dating app you reluctantly downloaded. The connection is immediate, but different from past attractions. There's chemistry, yes, but there's also clarity. You feel drawn to them, but you're not desperate. You're curious about who they are, not just about how they make you feel. As you talk, you notice things. They ask real questions. They listen with presence. They share their struggles without playing victim. They take responsibility for their growth. They have a relationship with themselves that's evident in how they speak. And you realize this person has done their work too. The first few dates feel different. There's less performing. You're both showing up authentically. They mention they're in therapy. You mention your own inner work. They talk about a pattern they've noticed in past relationships. You share a pattern of your own. There's vulnerability, but also strength. Neither of you is looking to be saved. You're both just curious if there's something here worth exploring. And as you get closer, something remarkable happens. Their presence challenges you to stay conscious. When you feel triggered, you can't just blame them and storm off like you used to. You have to pause, breathe. Check, is this really about them, or is this my wound speaking? And because they're conscious too, they meet your awareness with their own. They're not defensive, they're not attacking. They're genuinely interested in understanding what's happening between you. This creates what Jung called participation mystique, a mysterious merging of consciousness, where you're distinct individuals, yet also somehow one. You maintain your boundaries, but you can feel their feelings. You keep your center, but you understand their perspective. It's not codependence, it's conscious interdependence, a spiritual connection that doesn't erase individuality, but enriches it. And here's the beautiful part. When you experience this with someone, it's not about possessing them or being possessed. There's freedom within the intimacy, space within the closeness. You can be deeply connected and still fully yourself. This is what twin souls actually means, not that you're incomplete halves, but that you're two complete individuals who found a resonance so deep it feels like coming home to yourself through another person. This is what a soul meeting feels like. Not perfect harmony, but conscious engagement. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of awareness during conflict. Not always feeling good, but always moving toward truth. The shadows still appear. Of course they do. You're both human. Your old abandonment wound gets triggered when they need space. Their old engulfment wound gets triggered when you want closeness. But here's what's different. You both recognize what's happening. You can name it. I notice I'm feeling abandoned right now, even though you just need an evening to yourself. I notice I'm feeling smothered, even though you're just asking to spend time together. And in that naming, something shifts. The unconscious pattern loses its grip. You're no longer just reacting. You're responding from awareness. And that awareness creates space for something new to emerge. This is awakened love. Not love that never hurts. Love that remains conscious through the hurt. Not love that never triggers. Love that uses triggering as an opportunity for deeper understanding. Not love that never struggles. Love that treats struggle as sacred territory, where both people get to practice showing up more fully. And Jung knew this because he lived it. His relationship with his wife Emma was complex. His affair with Tony Wolfe was controversial. But through all of it, he was studying what happens when conscious people attempt sacred union. What he discovered was this real relationship isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone willing to stay conscious with you as you both navigate your imperfections. The meeting of two awakened souls. Two people who've done their individuation work creates what Jung called the conjunctio, the sacred marriage. Not just between two people, but between all the opposites those people carry. Masculine and feminine. Light and shadow. Spirit and matter. Consciousness and unconsciousness. This union becomes a container for continued transformation. The relationship itself becomes a practice, a spiritual path, a mirror that shows you everything you still need to integrate. And unlike unconscious love, where that mirror feels like betrayal, in conscious love, that mirror feels like grace. Because you're not trying to freeze the relationship in its honeymoon phase. You're not trying to prevent growth or change. You're actively supporting each other's evolution. Their growth excites you instead of threatening you. Their healing inspires your own. Their wholeness doesn't make you feel inadequate. It makes you feel invited to step into your own wholeness more fully. This is what becomes possible when two individuated people meet. And it's why Jung believed this kind of union is one of the most transformative experiences available to humans. Not because it's easy, because it's alchemical. It transforms both people into something more than they could become alone. Now let's talk about what nobody tells you. What they don't mention in the spiritual books about twin flames and divine union and awakened soulmates coming together in perfect harmony. It's still hard. It's still work. And sometimes it's harder than unconscious love, precisely because there's nowhere to hide. When you're in an unconscious relationship, you can blame your partner for everything. They're the problem. They need to change. If only they would do what you want, everything would be fine. There's a strange comfort in that delusion. It protects you from having to face yourself. But in conscious love, that protection is gone. When you're both aware, when you're both committed to personal development and taking responsibility, you can't blame them when you're triggered. You have to look at why you're triggered. You can't make them the villain when conflict arises. You have to examine your own contribution to the dynamic. And that's brutal. Because it means every fight, every disappointment, every moment of disconnection becomes an opportunity to see your own shadow more clearly. The relationship becomes a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They show you everything, the beautiful and the ugly, the mature and the childish, the conscious and the unconscious. Here's a common pattern that emerges. You're having a perfectly good day. Then they say something, maybe it's innocent, maybe it's slightly sharp, and suddenly you're flooded with rage or hurt or shame, all out of proportion to what actually happened. In an unconscious relationship, you blame them. You always do this. You never understand. You're so insensitive. But in a conscious relationship, you catch yourself. Because you've done enough work to recognize when your reaction is bigger than the trigger. So instead of attacking you, pause. You say, I need a minute. Something just happened inside me and I need to figure out what it is before I respond. And you go sit with it. You feel the feeling fully. You ask what memory this connects to. What old wound just got activated? What childhood pattern is playing out in adult clothing? And what you discover almost every time is that the trigger isn't really about them at all. It's about your father who never listened. Your mother who criticized everything. Your ex who betrayed you. Your childhood where love came with conditions. The present moment triggered the past pain, and you were about to punish your partner for something they didn't actually do. This is the work of conscious love. Separating past from present. Projection from reality. Your wound from their action. It's exhausting. It's humbling. It requires constant vigilance. But it's also liberating, because you stop creating the same drama in every relationship. You stop abandoning people for crimes they didn't commit. An unconscious person uses relationship to stay unconscious. They find someone who will play out their familiar patterns. The person with abandonment wounds finds someone emotionally unavailable. The person who fears engulfment finds someone clingy. And they blame the partner without seeing they chose someone who would trigger their unhealed wound. But a conscious person uses relationship to stay conscious. They know triggers will arise. They expect shadows to appear. And instead of running or blaming, they lean in. They ask the harder question, what is this showing me about myself? Let me give you an example. Imagine you've both had a long day. You come home wanting connection. They come home wanting space. In an unconscious relationship, this becomes a fight. You feel rejected. They feel pressured. You both dig into defensive positions. You're cold and distant. They're demanding and clingy. The evening is ruined. But in a conscious relationship, there's a different possibility. You notice the contraction in your chest when they say they need space. You recognize this feeling. It's your old abandonment story. The one that says, if someone needs space, it means they don't love you. And instead of reacting from that story, you pause. You breathe. You say, I notice I'm feeling triggered right now. My abandonment wound is active. Can we talk about this? And because they're conscious too, they don't get defensive. They don't make you wrong for having a wound. They understand. They've done their own work. So they say, I see you. And I want you to know, me needing space isn't about you. It's about me needing to process my day. Can we have 20 minutes apart and then reconnect? And you agree. Not because you're not still triggered, but because you trust the process. You trust that this moment of disconnection isn't abandonment. It's just two nervous systems with different needs learning to coexist. 20 minutes later, you reconnect. They've had their space. You've sat with your wound without making it their responsibility. And now you can actually meet each other. Now you can have the connection you both wanted in the first place. This is conscious love. It's not perfect. It's not always graceful. But it's real. And over time, these small moments of choosing consciousness over reactivity build something solid. They build trust. Not just trust in each other, but trust in the relationship's capacity to hold both of your humanness. But here's the challenge most people don't see coming. When you're both strong individuals, when you've both developed your sense of self, there's a natural tension between autonomy and intimacy. You're not codependent. You don't need each other. And that's healthy. But it also means you have to actively choose each other every day. Not from need, from desire, from commitment, from recognition that what you're building together is worth the work. This requires negotiation, real negotiation. Not the kind where one person dominates and the other submits. Not the kind where you keep score and trade favors. But genuine, vulnerable negotiation where both people's needs matter equally. You want to travel for 3 months. They want stability and routine. You need deep emotional processing. They need logic and structure. You thrive on social connection. They need solitude. How do you honor both? How do you create a life together that doesn't require either person to shrink? This is where most conscious relationships actually fail. Because consciousness doesn't automatically solve practical incompatibilities. It doesn't magically align your desires. What it does is give you tools to navigate misalignment without destroying each other. And sometimes, even with all the consciousness in the world, the misalignment is too great. Sometimes two awakened people meet, recognize each other's depth, and still have to walk different paths. Not because anyone did anything wrong, not because the love wasn't real, but because conscious love also means conscious enough to see when partnership isn't serving either person's growth. This is one of the hardest truths about awakened love. It's not guaranteed to last forever just because you're both conscious. Jung himself knew this. His marriage survived. His affair with Toni Wolff eventually ended. Both relationships taught him something essential about the complexity of human connection. Being awakened doesn't mean you never hurt each other. It means when you hurt each other, you repair. It doesn't mean you never want to leave. It means when you want to leave, you first examine whether you're running from intimacy or running toward your own truth. There's another trap that catches conscious people spiritual bypassing in relationship, using psychology and awareness to avoid actually feeling. Analyzing your trigger instead of experiencing it. Talking about the shadow instead of sitting with its discomfort. Turning every conflict into a therapy session instead of just being human together. You can be so conscious that you forget to be present. So aware of the patterns that you miss the moment. So committed to growth that you forget to just enjoy each other. Real conscious love requires both. The awareness and the innocence, the psychology and the spontaneity, the work and the play. And finding that balance is an art, not a science. But when you do find it, when two awakened people manage to create a relationship that honors both consciousness and humanity, both growth and pleasure, both depth and lightness, something sacred emerges. The relationship becomes more than the sum of its parts. It becomes a third thing, not you, not them, but the sacred space between you. Jung called this the temenos, the protected container where transformation happens. And in that container, both people are held. Both people are seen. Both people are challenged to become more fully themselves. This is where the real magic of awakened soulmates exists. Not in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of commitment to stay conscious through difficulty. Not in perfect compatibility, but in the willingness to work through incompatibility with respect and love. The fights still happen, but they become productive. The triggers still arise, but they become teachers. The shadows still appear, but they're welcomed as part of the wholeness you're both committed to embodying. And slowly over time, something builds. A depth of intimacy that unconscious people can't access. A safety that comes from being truly seen. A trust that comes from witnessing each other's worst and staying anyway. A love that isn't based on need or projection, but on genuine appreciation for who the other person actually is. This is what becomes possible. This is what Jung meant by the sacred marriage. This is what happens when an awakened person meets their soulmate, and they both choose to do the work of staying awake together. So, here's where we land. After everything we've explored about projection and shadow work and individuation and conscious love, what does this all actually mean for you? If you're reading this, you're probably somewhere on the journey. Maybe you're still healing from unconscious relationships. Maybe you've done enough work to recognize your patterns, but haven't met your person yet. Maybe you've met someone who feels different and you're trying to understand what's happening. Maybe you're in a long-term relationship, wondering if conscious love is even possible with your current partner. Wherever you are, here's what matters. The work you're doing on yourself isn't wasted. Every moment you spend facing your shadow, every time you choose awareness over reactivity, every instance of taking responsibility for your projections, as all of it, is preparing you for the kind of love Jung described. Because here's the truth about awakened soulmates: you don't find them. You become ready for them. And that readiness isn't about being perfect or having all your wounds healed or never being triggered again. It's about being conscious enough to recognize when you're in projection and honest enough to own it. It's about having done enough of your own work that you can meet someone else's work without judgment. It's about being whole enough that partnership becomes a choice, not a need. The meeting of two souls isn't about two perfect people. It's about two imperfect people who've done enough work to see their own imperfection clearly, who've developed enough awareness to take responsibility for their inner world, who've built enough relationship with themselves that they don't need another person to feel whole. And here's something Jung understood that most people miss. You can be in a relationship for years and suddenly wake up to consciousness. You don't have to start over with someone new. Sometimes the person you've been with all along becomes your awakened partner when you both commit to waking up together. The soulmate signs aren't always about finding someone new. Sometimes it's about seeing with new eyes the person who's been there all along. And when two people like this meet, something alchemical becomes possible. Not because the relationship will be easy, but because both people have the tools to work with difficulty consciously. Not because there won't be pain, but because both people can sit with pain without making it the other person's fault. This is what Jung meant by the conjunctio, the sacred union. It's the integration of all opposites, both within yourself and between two people, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, independence and intimacy, self and other. And in that integration, something new is born, not just a relationship, a transformational container where both people become more than they could alone. Think about what this actually means. Most people use relationship to stay small, to play out their familiar patterns, to prove their old stories about love and worthiness. But conscious people use relationship to grow. Every conflict becomes a mirror. Every trigger becomes a teacher. Every moment of disconnection becomes an opportunity to practice reconnecting with more awareness. This is hard. Let's be honest about that. It requires more courage than unconscious love. Because you can't hide, you can't blame, you can't stay in comfortable delusion. You have to keep showing up. Keep being honest. Keep doing your work even when it's painful. Keep choosing consciousness, even when unconsciousness would be easier. But it's also deeply, profoundly rewarding. Because the intimacy that becomes possible when two people show up this fully, it's unlike anything else. It's the difference between being loved for who you're pretending to be and being loved for who you actually are. Between being needed and being chosen. Between filling each other's emptiness and sharing each other's fullness. Now you might be wondering about timing. What if you've done the work but you haven't met your person yet? What if you had someone who felt like a soul connection, but the timing was off? What if you're worried you missed your chance? Here's what Jung would say: trust the process. Not because there's some cosmic plan, but because your individuation journey is precisely what's preparing you. Every relationship that didn't work out taught you something. Every moment of solitude developed something in you. Every heartbreak cracked you open to more consciousness. And the person who's right for you now in this stage of your journey might not have been right for you 5 years ago. Because you weren't ready. You hadn't integrated what needed integrating. You hadn't faced what needed facing. The timing wasn't off because the universe is cruel. The timing was off because you both had more becoming to do. But what if they're not awakened? What if you meet someone you're drawn to, but they haven't done their work? This is where conscious love gets complicated. Because you can't force someone's journey. You can't drag someone into awareness. You can't love someone into wholeness. They have to choose it themselves. And sometimes loving someone consciously means recognizing they're not in a place to meet you consciously. It means honoring their path, even if it diverges from yours. It means having the strength to walk away from even a profound connection if that connection isn't serving both people's growth. This is one of the hardest lessons of awakened love. Sometimes the most conscious choice is to let go. Not because you don't love them, but because real love means wanting their highest good, even if that doesn't include you. But here's the possibility that makes all of this worth it. When you do meet someone who matches your consciousness, when you encounter another awakened soul who sees you clearly and loves you anyway, when you find someone willing to do this difficult, beautiful work of staying aware together, the relationship becomes more than just companionship. It becomes a practice, a path, a spiritual journey you walk together. And in that relationship, you don't lose yourself. You find more of yourself. You don't shrink. You expand. You don't play small to keep the peace. You're challenged to step into your full power while holding space for theirs. You don't stop growing. Your growth accelerates because you're doing it with someone who understands that growth is the point. This is what Jung saw as the ultimate possibility of human relationship. Not escape from individuation, but individuation expressed through sacred union. Not two halves making a whole, but two wholes creating something greater than either could alone. The signs of this kind of connection aren't what movies taught you. It's not dramatic declarations or grand gestures. It's subtler and more profound. It's in how they respond when you're triggered, whether they get defensive or curious. It's in how they talk about past relationships, whether they blame their exes or take responsibility for their part. It's in how they relate to their own inner work, whether they're genuinely committed to growth or just performing spirituality. It's in the quality of their presence, Can they sit with silence? Can they hold space for your emotions without trying to fix you? Can they be vulnerable about their own struggles without collapsing into victim mode? Can they celebrate your success without feeling threatened? Can they challenge you without shaming you? It's in the presence you feel with them, the sense that you can be fully yourself, the relief of not having to perform, the safety of being seen, the excitement of discovering someone else who's done the work to see clearly. It's in how conflict feels different. Still uncomfortable, but not destructive. Still triggering, but not abandoning. Still challenging, but ultimately connecting. And if you're in an existing relationship wondering if conscious love is possible there, it might be. If both people are willing to wake up. If both people commit to doing their own work. If both people stop pointing fingers and start taking responsibility. Relationships can transform. Unconscious partnerships can become conscious ones. But only if both people choose it. The transformation isn't instant. It's a daily practice of choosing awareness over reactivity, choosing honesty over comfort, choosing growth over safety. And over time, those choices compound. They build something solid, something real, something that can hold both people's full humanity. So what now? What do you do with all this understanding? First, keep doing your work. Face your shadow. Drop your persona. Integrate your inner opposite. Touch your deeper self, not because it guarantees you'll meet your soulmate, but because it makes you whole regardless of whether you meet them or not. Second, pay attention. Notice your patterns. When you're attracted to someone, ask yourself, am I seeing them or am I seeing my projection? When you're triggered, ask yourself, is this really about them or is this my wound? When you're in conflict, ask yourself, am I taking responsibility or am I blaming? Third, be patient. Conscious love isn't common because conscious people aren't common. Most people don't do this work. Most people stay asleep. And you can't rush someone else's awakening. You can only stay committed to your own. Fourth, trust that if this kind of connection is meant for you, your readiness will call it in. Not through manifestation or positive thinking, but through the simple fact that when you're whole, you naturally attract other whole people. When you're conscious, you recognize consciousness in others. When you've done the work, you can finally meet someone who's done their work too. And fifth, remember that the relationship isn't the goal. Wholeness is the goal. The relationship is just the sacred container where that wholeness gets to express itself and expand. If the relationship comes beautiful, if it doesn't, you're still whole. If it ends, you're still whole. The wholeness is yours, always. This is the ultimate freedom Jung pointed to. You don't need another person to be complete. You're already complete. And from that completeness, if you choose to share your life with another complete person, you create something that serves not just yourselves, but the world. Because two conscious people in sacred union radiate something. They show others what's possible. They model a different way of loving. And maybe that's the real purpose of awakened soulmates meeting. Not just personal fulfillment, but demonstrating a new paradigm of relationship. One based on consciousness, not need. On wholeness, not emptiness. On sacred recognition, not unconscious projection. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. And the love you're capable of, the conscious, whole, awakened kind, it's already inside you. Whether you've met your person or not. Whether they've arrived or are still on their way. Whether this lifetime includes that sacred partnership or not. The work is its own reward. The consciousness is its own gift. And if two souls recognize each other in that consciousness and choose to walk together for however long they walk together, that's grace. That's what happens when an awakened person meets their soulmate. That's the transformation Carl Jung spent his life trying to help us understand. And now you understand it too, not just intellectually, but in a way that changes how you show up in love, in a way that transforms every relationship from this point forward, in a way that makes you ready for the sacred union Jung described, whether it arrives tomorrow or years from now, or in some form you can't yet imagine. The journey continues. The work continues. The awakening continues. And somewhere in that continuing, if you stay conscious and whole and true to yourself, love finds its way. Not the love you were taught to want. The love you were made for. The love that doesn't complete you, but celebrates you. The love that doesn't need you, but chooses you. The love that sees you're already whole and loves you not despite that wholeness, but because of it. That's the promise. That's the possibility. That's what happens when awakening meets love, and love meets awakening, and two souls recognize each other in the sacred space between. And that recognition, that meeting, that conscious love, it's worth every moment of the journey that brought you here. If you're on this path, if you're doing this work, if you're becoming the kind of person capable of awakened love, share your experience below. Where are you on this journey? What has your process of becoming whole looked like? This community is here for your story. And if you want to continue exploring these depths, if Jung's wisdom speaks to you, if you're hungry for more understanding of human psychology and transformation and what it means to live consciously, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning of what we're uncovering together. You're not alone on this path. And the work you're doing matters more than you know.